Yes, hello. So my name is Neil Cocker. I work in the world of innovation in corporate. So I work for a joint venture between Vodafone and the Luxembourg government, and what we look at doing is helping scale-ups, so advanced startups, on their journey, their growth journey. But me personally, I've worked in I was a student at Aberdeen between 1990 and 1994, so quite a long time ago. And my career has been quite a varied one. But maybe I guess I'll talk a bit more about that
Yeah,
during this
thank you.
session.
Okay, and the next question is, could you please tell me about your decision to attend University of Aberdeen and what factors influence your choice?
Yeah, so I visited Aberdeen when I was about 17 years old in my last year at school, and something about it just felt right.
Mm-hmm.
So I visited a few universities. I was looking at Edinburgh as well, and Dundee, but something felt right about Aberdeen, and yeah, it worked out really well.
That's great. What were some of your most favorite courses during your time at university?
Um, my first year, I'd been at school. My best subjects were English and history. So I gravitated towards studying those
Mm-hmm.
subjects in my first year or two at Aberdeen. But I chose, as I moved into third year, I chose to specialise in English, and I focused a lot on American literature, Scottish literature, and Irish literature,
Mm-hmm.
and those were the courses that really inspired me. And in particular, I did an amazing course with a writer called William McIlvanney. He's quite famous for inventing Scottish crime fiction. Really, he
Mm-hmm.
was he was the one who wrote a book called Laidlaw, which is viewed as the first ever Scottish crime novel, I think. But he was an amazing teacher, and that was an incredibly inspiring experience to be taught by him in my third year at Aberdeen.
That's very interesting, thank you. Were there any particular challenges or obstacles that you faced during your time at university as a student?
That's an interesting question. I think I think it's changing now, but we were talking 30 years ago. But often for my generation of Scottish students, we had a good education. In government schools, we had a very good
Mm-hmm.
education in the 80s and before in Scottish schools, but you weren't really taught how to talk.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got to university, like many young people from my background, we were very shy. We were very reluctant to talk in the
Mm-hmm.
class in tutorials. Whereas I think the young people who came from different cultures or had been to
Mm-hmm.
private schools, they had been taught about how to speak from an early age, and how to talk in class, how to communicate verbally. So I think when I look back, the first couple of years, that was a bit of a journey for me to build the confidence to talk in class. And that was something I think that was common for my generation.
This is a very interesting point, thank you. Did you engage in any student organizations or club? And if yes, how did you manage to balance your academic responsibilities with your extracurricular activities?
Good question. So I joined clubs in my first week at the Freshers Fair, but to be honest, I didn't really follow them up, just mainly because I had a very active social life.
Mm-hmm.
So I enjoyed the social life very much. Uh, so and in some ways, I think I beat myself up a little bit about it, because after leaving university, I thought I missed out on some opportunities because I didn't join clubs. But in reality, as you get older, you realize that the friendships that you make, and the experiences you have from an active social life
Mm-hmm.
are really good for you in the long term for your career. Because, for example, if you spend a lot of time in the pub talking to people from different backgrounds, different experiences, different cultures, you learn a lot about how to talk to people and connect with people and be interesting and be interested in others and how to listen as well. So I think actually, even though I didn't take much active part in clubs, I think having a very active social life at university compensated for that.
Yeah, you just answered the next question about if you made like lifelong friendships and connections. So you answered that.
Yeah, I did. I'm still, maybe just to add a little more detail, but I'm still in touch with probably, social media helps, right? But probably on Facebook, I'm connected with around, 15 people probably that I went to Aberdeen with. And then I'm probably, very close with, I would say, two people I'm still in touch with really regularly from Aberdeen.
Yes. What were your career aspirations before attending the University of Aberdeen and upon finishing it?
Oh, questions are getting more difficult now, right? So I think I was very interested in writing. So I wanted to write fiction when I was about 17, 18 already. That was my ambition. But I realised it's a very difficult option in terms of making a living. So I was a little bit. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, which now I think actually is quite a good thing when you're young, when you're that age. Because if you have a very, very laser-like focus on a particular type of career, often what happens is people get bored of it when they've been doing it for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. So I had quite a lot of friends who, for example, became lawyers or went into a particular profession and then completely changed when they were in their 30s because they just wanted a different direction in life. So I was the opposite. After I left university, I was a teacher for a couple of years. And then I worked in a variety of office jobs. So I would say I was drifting a little bit. But I think the advantage of that is you have a wide range of experiences. You learn about what you don't want to do in life. And then when you do find things you're interested in, the light bulb bing goes on and you get excited and you start to move more strongly in that direction. So I've always been, my career has been quite, to use a word I've seen used, squiggly, so it's kind of going like this. So my career always took unusual directions. But I think now the way the world is changing very rapidly, with AI and all other multiple other aspects, I think the variety in my career has been useful.
It's very interesting. What are some key factors that help you to keep you motivated during your time at university?
I think I always liked traveling was really important to me. So every summer, I would find a job and I would work and then I would travel at the end of the summer. And probably the one that I loved the most was I worked in the US for one summer. I did one of those Camp America exchanges, and that was amazing. So I think the idea of, sometimes you have a lot of work to do for your studies, but the idea of having something exciting to look forward to in the summer as well was always a big motivator for me.
That's incredible. Could you please describe your current job responsibilities as well as your previous roles?
Okay. So currently, I mentioned it briefly at the start. So I'm working in a joint venture between Vodafone and the Luxembourg government. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring tech companies to Luxembourg and grow them through Vodafone, through business at Vodafone. So, for example, we work with companies, cybersecurity, data and analytics. Very recently, generative AI is of course becoming a really hot topic. So I'm involved. We're a small team, a team of 12, I do a lot of work in finding the companies and evaluating the companies. And then what we do is we put them through a program where we coach the companies and we give them introductions to key people at Vodafone who make decisions on how to spend budget, on which partners they want to work with for large projects, etc. So, and then if successful, we sign a contract with the scale-up, as we call them, not startups, but scale-ups. And we look to work with them for usually 5 years. We establish them on the ground in Luxembourg. We help to coach them into opportunities, help them to navigate their way through the labyrinth of corporates. Large corporates are very difficult environments for young companies, small companies to understand when they come into it cold. So we help them on that journey. So really interesting work. I've been doing it for about 6 or 7 years. Before that, I've been with Vodafone in total for 13 years. So before Tomorrow Street, as the joint venture is called, before Tomorrow Street, I was the business manager for the chief procurement officer at Vodafone. So that involved, I was using a lot of the skills I learned at Aberdeen, in fact, because I was doing a lot of writing and a lot of storytelling. So I was creating executive briefs for the top leaders at Vodafone, the CEO, the CFO, creating presentations, explaining complex projects, complex situations in very concise summaries. So I did that for a few years. Before that, I worked in a much more Scottish industry. I was working for 10 years in whiskey and white spirits. So I worked for Diageo, which is the world's largest drinks company, and it's brands like Johnny Walker, Smirnoff, Guinness, Baileys. But I worked mainly in the whiskey side of the business, and that took me. I had 3 years in Scotland and 7 years in Amsterdam. So it was that was the beginning of my career in international business. And I worked for them for a spell in Singapore as well. And the work there was focused on supply chain management, really about how do you firstly create the product, the vision that the marketers have. How do you work with the suppliers, the bottlers, the label producers, the factories, to create the product and then ship it out to the end customer, and all the complexities involved in that. So I had 10 years in that world. And met my wife in Amsterdam, and she works for the European institutions, so we moved to Luxembourg for her career, and then I found a job at Vodafone. So I went from one of the world's most ancient industries, alcohol, to one of the world's most modern industries, telecommunications and connectivity.
That's absolutely amazing. Very interesting. Thank you for your response. And the next question is, how would you say your mindset and way of working changed since attending University of Aberdeen?
I think that the most important thing for me was expanding horizons. Mm-hmm. Because, I think it's often the same for most young people. You grow up in a certain environment, which I was lucky to have, very good parents. But we lived in, mostly small villages in Scotland, moved a few times. And I was really keen to experience something different, something bigger, I guess you could say. So just going to university in Aberdeen and meeting people from different countries, different cities, different backgrounds, different cultures, was really thrilling. And it really accelerates your development as a person. And I think, it's just continued my very international life now, almost 30 years after leaving Aberdeen. It started then because I got fascinated by just mixing with people from all kinds of different backgrounds, and I've been doing it ever since, right? So I think just that's what opens the doors. I think when you're when you're at that stage of your life, you're leaving school, you're in your late teens, early 20s. It's an amazing experience just to connect and interact with different cultures and different people and understand the possibilities and the potential that's out there in the world.
Thank you, that's great. And another question is, what advice would you give to students who are currently struggling with stress at the university, for example, because of the exams or something like that?
Yeah, that's a really good question as well, Vadim. And I think it's good nowadays. There's much more awareness of it, right? Compared to the 90s, where we didn't really have so much understanding of mental well-being, I would say. And I think that's where having a balanced life really, really helps. So, for me, I always worked when I was at Aberdeen, so I had kitchen jobs. So I worked as a dishwasher.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that was very good for me just to change things around. So, at the end of the day, after my studies, I would walk to my workplace and just do something completely different for an hour and a half, 2 hours. That helped a lot. And I think, sport or just walking, for me, I like to walk a lot, and that always helped me a lot. I would, where possible. It's not always possible in Aberdeen because of the weather, right? But if it's possible, just walking a lot really helped to clear my head. And I think just talking to people, reaching out, having a good social network, not on social media necessarily, but face to face, spending time with friends and people that you know and trust face to face, I think releases a lot of pressure and stress.
Thank you for your advice. You already mentioned that you used to travel during the summer and work during the summer during your time at university. Were there any other part-time jobs or internships that you participated in during your university time?
Not strictly speaking in internships, but I think I found just working in regular jobs was amazingly educational. Mm-hmm. So one summer I worked at a dairy factory on Berryden Road in Aberdeen. It's long gone now. I think they built a road. They built a road over this building in the 90s, late 90s. But it was a really tough environment. It was really old-fashioned factory, lots of manual labour. You learn a lot, I think, when you go into very different environments from what you're used to, and you have to connect with people and interact with people and do a job properly. I think it's a very good education in life in general, because you can take that mindset into any job. I think you go into a new place and you have to find a way to connect with people and interact with them. And if you do that, I worked in this factory, I worked in many kitchens. You're going into worlds that are quite different from your own as a student. And I think it's a really good experience to have, rather than going into, I would say, the more sanitized environment of an official internship, which is a world that university prepares you for. I think if you go into those other worlds, I think you learn a lot more.
Thank you for that. And another question is, many students struggle with transition from academia to careers world. What advice would you give to students who are unsure what to do next after graduation?
Okay, yeah, good one. I think I often see with your generation, Vadim, we have people, we have interns that join my team regularly. Every year we have an intake of interns, and I think the generation, it's a great generation, really well educated, really understand how to use all kinds of digital tools, all kinds of platforms really, really well. I think where they need help often is with politics, because big organizations are very political. And I think navigating those relationships and those politics is often where the older people like me in a workplace can help a younger person to understand and understand how to get up to speed and how to navigate this new world that they're in. If you don't know what you want to do, I think it's useful just to take an entry-level job somewhere. I would say aim for an environment where you can use your skills. So, for me, I was always good at writing and good at storytelling and good at, I think building documents, has always been a bit of a speciality of mine, whether it's PowerPoint or it's a Word document or whatever. So I think probably my mistake when I was in my 20s was I learned a lot. I was a teacher for 2 years, but it wasn't the right career for me. It wasn't right for my personality. So even though I learned a lot, I would probably do things differently going back. I would probably try to get more into a world where I could use the problem for me with teaching was being thrown in front of 25 teenagers 7 times a day. It's a really, really tough job to do. So I think the office environment, I realized, was much more my kind of world where I had some time to think and I would do some deep work rather than this very intense face-to-face work. So I think if you are struggling to know what to do, think very carefully about the skills that you have and what you like doing, and then aim for a job that seems to be linked to that, or a company or an organization or an environment. And if it's only a 6-month contract, then great, right? Because you can try something for 6 months and see where it takes you. But also, going back to your original question about clubs, I think that's maybe something I do regret when I look back as well, that I didn't get more involved in, for example, the student newspaper. I think that would have been something that I would have learned a lot, working on. So if you have been in a club, then, by all means think about the skills you've learned there, how you could use them in a different environment, and use that as a way to guide you.
Yes, thank you for this incredible advice. And next question is, what factors have contributed to your success in leadership roles?
I think for me, it's always a learning curve when you have your first people management, your first leadership role. It's quite daunting because often you're managing people who are older than you, people who are unhappy in the job. So you always have challenges. So my first people management job, I was managing 10 people, and I was amazed really after a few months, because most of my time was spent managing personal issues rather than work related stuff. Because I was in Amsterdam, it was mainly, I was like 32 years old. And I was managing a bunch of people who were mainly younger than me, backpacker type of environment where people would come, they would work for 6 months, then they would move on somewhere else. So a lot of young people who were lonely, who were having, maybe they'd had a big relationship issue with someone else in the team. So I had to realize that a lot of the time you're dealing with people and people issues rather than work issues. So that was quite a big learning. But I think finding your style is really important. And for me, it's always about integrity and honesty and being authentic and being who you are. And it's difficult at first when you go into that first leadership or management role. But like anything in life, the more you do it, the more you find your style and your place.
Yes, that's great. And the last question for today is, if you could go back in time, what advice would you give yourself during university time?
Oh, that's an interesting question, because it's like this sliding doors moment, as it's sometimes called. It was based on this 90s movie about alternative realities. Yeah. Because in the end, I made mistakes, when I was at university, when I was a young person. But in the end, I'm happy with the way my life has turned out. So if I went back in time in a time machine and told my young self to do something different, then maybe I would have a completely different life, one I was less happy with. But I think the general advice of following your interests, following your passions is really important. So if you're really interested in something, even if somebody says, if someone says, "Oh, you don't have what it takes. You'll never be able to do that." Don't listen to them. Just persevere. I think follow your heart, follow your passions, and go for it. Right? You only have one life, so what you'll find is if you follow your passions, maybe things don't happen straight away, but you discover other paths and other roads that you wouldn't discover if you were just sitting at home afraid to make a move. So if you throw yourself into something and you follow your passions, I think usually